Welcome to our third Wednesday Museum After Hours program. We're here at Wilson County Historical Museum. I'm Leanne Githens, and I'm happy to present tonight a little bit of information about the rodeo. Now, some of you may be tuning in expecting to hear about the fair and the rodeo. However, this year, the Wilson County Pro Rodeo will be held Memorial Day weekend, next weekend, in about 8 days, May 24 and 25. And we'll be talking a little bit more, have someone talk about why that change is. The fair will continue to be in July. So I think there's some good reasons for that change, and we hope that you will be able to attend some of the events. In Wilson County, the rodeo has a very long history. And we're going to have Val Whirl with us to talk about that history. She knows way more about it than I do, and she can tell a little bit of some of her family history with it also. For those of you that are not really rodeo fans or may not know too much about it, I do want to tell you that it's really just more than just for the entertainment of the public. Although they are fun to go to, and it's great to see what the cowboys can accomplish and to see what the horses are able to do and what the cowboys are able to get the horses to do. For those participants, it is really much more than that. It is about prize money. It's about measuring up to a standard, and it is sometimes about setting records. I want to highlight one of the participants. This was in the 1980s. His name was Sean Burchett, and he has been inducted into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame and Museum for the American Cowboy. And while he was here in Fredonia, he was the first steer roper ever to post a time under 9 seconds. And he did it twice in 1987. He set the world record with a time of 8.5 seconds, and he set that record right here in Fredonia, Kansas. So there's a lot to be learned about the rodeo and rodeo history. Val Whirl presented a program to the rodeo last week, and she is unfortunately unable to be with us live tonight, but I was able to take a recording of her presentation to rodeo and be able to share that with you. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a heads up. That program was in the local Pizza Hut, so you're going to hear some ambient noise in the background, but I think you'll be able to get a good idea of what her presentation was and hear her explanations for a lot about the rodeo. So let's listen to Val Whirl.
I've done a little research on our Wilson County Fair Association, and back in 1917 was the first annual exhibit for the Wilson County Fair. I'm just going to kind of give you a timeline. In 1924, the first shares were initiated for the Wilson County Fair Association up until 1930. And then up until 1930, Wilson County had successful fairs that featured harness racings, and they would set up the track. And that was all down there. Do you remember that? I've heard people talk about having 12. Probably not. Sorry. But I remember people talking about having the track and horse racing. So horses and fair have been a part of our legacy of Wilson County Fair Association since the 1930s. And then there's kind of a gap from 1930 to 1950. And so I'm presuming, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would presume with the Depression during that year, World War II, things kind of had to take a back seat to those events that were happening. And then based on some of my research that I did at the museum the other day, based on some papers and some flyers that they had, in 1946 was the first open rodeo that the association held. And then in 1947 was the second annual rodeo that was held. And then in the 50s, efforts were made to reestablish the fair and the extension of the 4-H exhibits. There was little money, and they only had 2 buildings, and that kind of began in the 50s, where they brought back the horse racing and the racetrack and the free barbecue. You know, I hear my in-laws talk about how they would pack the people in. You buy your rodeo ticket, they'd have the barbecue, and it would just pack people in. Then in May 22, 1956, the Wilson County Fair was organized and incorporated under the Kansas statutes, and 31 citizens signed the application for them to be approved in the state of Kansas. Prior to 1956, the Fredonia Chamber of Commerce financed the entire cost of the Wilson County 4-H Fair, which I find very interesting, because the chamber helps us now advertise and helps us to promote our events that we have. But due to the heavy financial responsibility to the chambers and to the members, the time had come for the fair to organize and to continue on to the fair, so that's when the Fair Board was incorporated. It qualified for county funds for the premiums, the awards, and we still do so today, and that's where part of your mill levy goes, is to help pay for us to put on the fair and to pay for the premiums and those awards that the kids work so hard to get, and the open show that we have. Then in 1957 to 1960, Dr. Porter, who was a vet, he was the president of the association. During that time, and some of this it was kind of hard to follow, but during that time, the rodeo facilities and the arena lighting was purchased and constructed, and they were in debt. And when you read his story, which I know y'all, I'm trying, I could spend an hour here. You don't have an hour, so Dr. Porter was really institutional into putting together the Fair Association and those facilities down there. And that history comes, and I have to give credit to Terry Lyons, because he really put his heart and soul into this history in the background. So that's where a lot of this information is coming. So credit is due to Terry Lyons. So during that time, they continued with the free barbecue, with the purchase of a rodeo ticket, and that was held in 1958. Then in 1967, they still needed money. They were still broke. So then they instigated or incorporated or initiated, is the word I'm trying to use, is a membership drive. And it was a $3 membership in 1967. So you could be a member for $3. Then Dr. Porter, the vet, he lived in Panama City, Panama, and he came back, and that is when they dedicated the Porter building to Dr. Porter. And there's quite a story that goes with that, and the building of that building. And I'll get to that. I'm trying to get through the timeline. So, until they dedicated it to him, they called it just the Tin Building. That's what they called it, the Tin Building. So during 1968, they had 189 paid association members, and in the program that they had, that you could buy for 25 cents, they had 3 columns of 63 names. That was 189 paid memberships back then for $3, which I thought was pretty neat. Back during that time, Mr. Blankenship was the president, who the arena is named for. Joe Donahue, I'm sure you'll remember who Joe Donahue was. He was the vice president. Lowell Shire was the secretary, and Willard Collins was the treasurer, and I knew all them gentlemen. Well, I didn't know Mr. Blankenship, but I knew Joe and Lowell and Willard. In 1970, on July 27th, it was dubbed the biggest Wilson County Fair and the largest Kansas Open Rodeo in Fredonia, Kansas. So, Wilson County, the fair, the rodeo, we have such a legacy of keeping that legacy alive and the history alive. And that is what we are really striving to do, is keeping that legacy alive with the fair and the rodeo. With the ticket and the barbecue, they had 3 nights of rodeo then, and then afterward they had a dance at the Porter Building. And the rodeo helped finance and paid for a lot of the buildings down there and helped with other events that the community held. It's kind of funny when you read about the history. Dr. Porter remembers the first cowboy strike in Wilson County, which is going to lead me to another story. Cowboy strike. Yeah. Right before the rodeo was going to start, the bronc riders striked, wanting to choose their own judges. So you have cowboys that want to choose their own judges. So the rodeo's fixing to begin. The cowboys and the guys aren't getting on their broncs. So the crowd has no idea what's going on. So the announcer is kind of ad-libbing it, stretching it out a little bit. And so finally the committee back then thought, okay, we better concede and let them choose their judges. And the rodeo went on. So it was kind of funny. So they said that was the first amateur strike in rodeo in Wilson County. This rodeo became the largest amateur rodeo in Kansas, and it was then decided that the stock contractors would choose who the judges would be going forth. In August of 1970, Blankenship Stadium came into being, and hardworking volunteers and financial help from the city of Fredonia helped build the Blankenship. The cement stands over the bucking chutes. The mayor at that time was William Falstead, and Merlin Blankenship Sr. was the president of the association, and you could buy a program for 25 cents in 1970. They had 4,000 people at the free barbecue, and it was 105 degrees. Yeah. Can you imagine 4,000 people? I would love it if we could have 4,000 people. Yeah. Back then they had a rodeo queen, and she was from Independence, Kansas. She was crowned the Wilson County Rodeo Queen. She won $25, and she received a belt buckle. And Lon Chaney, which we know who Lon Chaney is, he was from Copan, Oklahoma, won the all-around, and he won $340. So, compared to today, that, due inflation. So, and at that time, Joe Donahue was the president of the Fair Association. And then on July 25th through the 27th in 1974, based on some of the file at the museum, at the Wilson County Historical Museum, the file showed that they purchased the rodeo bleachers. And I don't know if it was these bleachers, I don't think so. But they purchased them for $9,000. And then kind of in the story it says, and again, we're broke. It's just kind of funny how we've been in debt, we get out of debt, and then we're constantly trying to improve. So with that being said, yes, we have changed our dates. So in 2 weeks today, we will be having our pro rodeo. And the reason we changed it was because we thought people would prefer to sit out in 80-degree weather and not 115-degree weather. And it's really kind of the start of the Cowboys run. The guys, we're trying to bring in more rough stock riders because that's what we hear a lot of is, well, we'd like to see more bull riders, we'd like to see more rough stock riders. Well, by July, everybody lives on a budget, and those guys are either beat up, sore, or they're out of money. We also can't compete against Cheyenne, Deadwood, Burwell, Spanish Fork. Those rodeos are way bigger rodeos than we are, way bigger. Just like Cheyenne, just for the steer roping, their added money is $40,000 just for one event. So that's $1 million rodeo. So if you're a contestant, where are you going to go? You're going to go where the money is. So we felt that it would be a good move to change our rodeo date to go on Memorial Weekend. It'll be cooler. Claremore, Oklahoma's rodeo's going on, and the guys can make it back and forth. And then we're the only 2 rodeos in the circuit that weekend. And it'll be cooler. We hope. So we're hoping it'll be successful, and we've talked to many just talking to the citizens around the community, they kind of like the idea of it not being so hot. And we really are hoping to have more rough stock. The timed event end, we don't hurt, so we get enough contestants there. But we are presuming and we are assuming that our contestant list will be way bigger. So we just ask that the community comes and supports us and helps come through them gates. So a little history about because we are a PRCA rodeo, and a little history on that is, and this is kind of where my family legacy comes into, and rodeo runs very dear to my heart. I didn't grow up with it, but I married into it, so it is dear to my heart. It used to be known as the Cowboy Turtle Association. The organization was created in 1936 when a group of cowboys walked out at a rodeo in Boston Garden. That is in Boston, back east. And Neil's grandfather was there. So that would have been Everett Shaw. And so back then you took a train and you loaded the horses and your family and you rented an apartment for a month, and they would stay back there for a month. Mom, Nana, Sue, my mother-in-law, Neil's mom, we have 2 saddles from Madison Square Garden. And I've rode in them saddles, and they're still at the house. And so Cowboys struck in Boston Garden because the stock contractor was pocketing their entry fee money. So all the Cowboys got was the added money. So the Cowboys said, okay, if you're going to pocket the money, we're not going to perform. So they striked at Boston Garden to protest the actions of the rodeo promoter, W.T. Johnson, who refused to add the Cowboys' entry fees to the rodeo's total purse. Johnson finally gave in to the Cowboys' demands, and the successful strike led to the formation of the Cowboy Turtles Association. And the reason for that name was because they were slow to organize when they were afraid to stick out their necks to get what they wanted, like the turtles might do. So at my house I have turtles. I collect turtles. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. And so in 1945, the Turtles changed their name to the Rodeo Cowboys Association, the RCA. And then in 1975, the organization became the PRCA. The staff consists of about 70 full-time employees, but grows to nearly 100 during the peak rodeo season, which is starting now. And then there's 13, so we have 13 circuits that make up the PRCA. And those are in Montana, the Mountain States, the Wilderness Circuit, the Columbia River, California, the Turquoise, Texas, Prairie, Badlands, Great Lakes, Southeast, and First Frontier. So the Cowboys choose what circuit they want to be a part of. We're part of the Prairie Circuit, which encompasses Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma. So that's our circuit. And so we're in the Prairie Circuit. So that's a little history about PRCA. A little history about Neil's grandfather, who's one of the charter members of the Cowboys Turtle Association, he was card number 7. When they striked at Boston, the Cowboys came to Pawpaw. We called him Pawpaw, but he was Everett Shaw. And they said, we want you to go talk to this man because we know you are a man of integrity, and what you say you will carry out your word with. And they said, so you should be card number 1. Pawpaw said, no, I don't want to be card number 1, but I'll take card number 7. So he kept card number 7, and he carried that through till he retired, and it went through when he was in the RCA. So that carried through when they incorporated. He was on the board of directors for 20 years. He was an event director for the steer roping and the calf roping. As I said earlier, we have 2 saddles that come from Madison Square Garden, New York, that are 1936 and 1938. Pawpaw, he roped calves back then because steer roping, he could not rope steers in Madison Square Garden or the Boston Gardens. So he was a very good calf roper. Between 1945 and 1962, he won 6 world championships, and like I said, he was one of the original Turtles Association, and he died in 1979. He steer roping champion in 1945 to 1946, 1948, 1951, 59, and 62. So that's how the PRCA came, was from the Cowboy Turtles Association and the family legacy. And then Neil's dad, Sonny, my father-in-law, he was a 30-year card holder, won the calf roping rookie title in 59, is what Mom told me. Won the world steer roping, he won the world championship in the steer roping in 1977, and he qualified for 14 national finals rodeos in steer roping and in tie down. There was a lot of history there. He's in the Cheyenne Hall of Fame, he's in National Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City, Cheyenne Frontier Days. He's also out here in the Kansas Cowboy Hall of Fame in Dodge City, as my friend Corbin Stevens is, as Kelly's dad is. He's also been incorporated this year into the Cowboy Hall of Fame. Dad was the first Kansas Cowboy to make the national finals in the state of Kansas. I have that somewhere. I don't know what year that was. So that's kind of the legacy of our family. And then our Uncle Dick Truitt, he was the first man to bulldog a buffalo at a Kansas rodeo in 1930, and he got paid $10 to bulldog that buffalo. And did you know that, Jerry? Yeah. And then Neil, my husband, is a gold card member, meaning that when you become a gold card member in the PRCA, you're a 20-year or plus member, and you get an actual gold card. And he's been to the national final steer roping 5 times, won the average of the steer roping in 1990. And I'm sure you've all heard of the Pendleton Roundup in Pendleton, Oregon, Letterbuck. He's won that, and he's won other rodeos. So that's kind of basically the history of our rodeo. In 2 weeks, we're going to be having our Wilson County Pro Rodeo, and Friday morning is our steer roping slack. So we'll be holding our steer roping slack Friday morning. Friday night will be our first performance, and horse musical chairs will be up on horseback. We're bringing that back. It's making its comeback. So we're going to limit it to 10 contestants, and it's just like musical chairs but on horseback. So it gets a little wild because it comes down to 1 chair. And so how it starts is everybody sits in a chair, a hold of their horse. They have to have control over their horse. When the music starts, they got to jump on that horse, run down to the other end where there's only 9 chairs. And then we just start taking chairs away till there's 1 chair left, 2 cowboys left.
They win $1 million.
I wish. Actually, there's $100 added money and $10 entry fees, and winner takes all. And then Saturday night, we're going to have wild cow milking, and we're limiting that to 5 teams, and the legendary Corbin Stevens will be our judge. And so we have $250 added and $300 entry fee money, so it's a pot of $1,750, I think, for the Cowboys to win, and then it's split up from there. So Friday night's horse musical chairs, Saturday night is wild cow milking. And then we're also going to have sheep scramble for the little kids, and then calf scramble for the bigger kids. So we've worked all year long. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors, because without them, this event could not happen. And also, as the news, we're going to have a video scoreboard this year. So you can see all the action up on the video scoreboard, and really give a shout out to all of our sponsors for doing that. So we are expecting a grand time. It will be fun, and we hope everybody will come fill the stands. So thank you, Rotary, for allowing me to come share our history. There's a whole lot more, but you know how it is. So thank you very much.
Very nice. So thank you to Valerie Worrell for her presentation. And I just give you a heads up that our next presentation will be June 19. And because it's right in the height of gardening season, we're going to be talking about a cannery that was here in Fredonia. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.